Well, it's always an adventure dealing with Harold. Anyhow, good morning. It's a pleasure being here. Harold, Dennis, Stevie, Alan, and Michael, members of the ILA Executive Council and the vice presidents who are here on the dais. It's a great opportunity to address you on our military program with the ILA, and it's a very exciting time. 5 years ago, the military awarded 6 5-year military procurement contracts. That was in 2015. Those contracts are now due to be new ones in 2020, which means that we are starting right now in the summer of 2019 all the way through 2020 to compete for those contracts. There's at least 6 and maybe more. And to the members of the ILWU out over there, Willie Adams and that group, you've got 2 coming up at the same time, 2020. So a lot of what I'm going to discuss with the ILA is also pertinent to what you guys need to do on the West Coast. Now, before I get involved in the details of all of those procurements, I'm going to tell you about an issue that I'm trying to work with the military. The procurement approach that the military uses on military stevedoring contracts consists of an evaluation of 4 factors. One is price. It's important. The other one is leadership and labor. Very important. Do they have the right stevedoring leadership to execute that military contract, and do they have the experience and labor to do it? The other one is technical approach. Do they have the right approach to handling military stevedoring cargoes efficiently? Do they have the right equipment? Do they know how to drive an M1A1 tank? Do they know how to drive an APC on and off a ship and on a railroad car? And the last one is, do they have the experience and performance that's going to be required? Those are the 4 factors. My issue with the military now is, how do you evaluate those 4 factors? Beginning about 8 or 9 years ago, the military adopted an approach called Low Price Technical Acceptable, LPTA. Now remember, on all of those factors, LPTA puts about 70 to 75% of the evaluation on low price. Minimum of what is left in the criteria, 25% on the other 3, management, technical approach, and past performance and experience. I think that's wrong. Low price technical acceptable came into vogue about 10 years ago when they had declining DoD budgets, and the Army's perception and the military's perception that LPTA is going to save the government money. It doesn't, in my view. And it is a deterrent to our signers of the master contract that we work with the ILA in competition. And a good example of that is we compete against a company called Portis. Portis generally uses, not exclusively, generally uses non-ILA labor. So that puts us in an advantage because they can generally get lower prices. It also brings in companies like shippers. Let me tell you about shippers. It goes all the way back 5 years ago. Shippers won a military procurement contract for both Charleston and the Texas ports, Beaumont, Corpus Christi, Port Arthur. They were the low price. They didn't have a good management. They did not have a good technical approach. They didn't have the right equipment. And they lost money and had to quit within 2 years. And the last 3 years, they had to turn over the contract to Cooper Ports America to execute. And that's what low-price technical acceptable gives you. So what I'm trying to do is to convince the Army to use the alternative approach called best value. And Don, Marcus, not the one you described, but the one I'm about to describe. And best value takes all of those 4 factors. They're on the slide in front of you. And yes, low price is important, but so are the other 3. And so the write-up of how the military stevedoring contractor addresses those 3 and how is he got the right leadership. And we know how important that is at a given port that we work. We know about the technical approach that I explained earlier. And we also know about the past experience in performance. That gives us a much better chance and also gives the military, I think, a better product. And I think it's probably in the long run will save them money. So I've been working, I'd say, for the last 2 or 3 years with U.S. Transcom and the U.S. Army's Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, that handles all the transportation for the Army, to try and get them to change this approach. I don't think I'm succeeding, but I have succeeded in at least planting the seed. Maybe not this procurement cycle, but maybe for the following procurement cycle. Okay, let's move on and let's get into the actual procurement. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said before, we've got all of these procurements coming up. We have to assume, for reasons I explained, that it's probably going to be low-price technical acceptable. Now, we've already started the process, interestingly enough. There are military solicitations for stevedoring. The military officially calls them stevedoring and related terminal services, S&RTS. You don't need to remember that. There's not going to be a test on that one. But procurement of the stevedoring is called, I just call it stevedoring contracts, military stevedoring contracts. That's already started. The notice of intent to issue a proposal came out in early July for Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Corpus Christi. Already. Within about 30 days, I would say mid-August, the actual procurement will come out. The notice is just to the stevedoring companies, are you interested? Tell me about you. And then they send the proposal out about 30 days later, which will happen in August. Well, we're also going to have to do that pretty soon also for the other ports. Charleston, Jacksonville in Army, Jacksonville Marine Corps, and Cape Canaveral. Gulfport, Portsmouth, and Philadelphia are an interesting category. The Army's, remember I mentioned this Army Transportation Command's called Army's Surface Deployment and Distribution Command. That's commanded by a new general, Major General Steve Farman. He's an interesting guy. He's trying to change the old procedure. This is why I think I may ultimately win on best value. But anyhow, he also feels that there should be more military ports. And so he's looking seriously at Portsmouth, right now, seriously at Portsmouth and Gulfport in Mississippi. And I keep hearing rumors out of Transcom that they, in fact, are going to add that to the procurement cycle. So we could have those 2 in addition. And Jim Paler, they have not given up on Philadelphia, but I think the priority right now is going towards Portsmouth and Gulfport. Sunny Point is going to be delayed until 2021 because, as some of you might not remember, but Sunny Point was also one of the contracts that were up back in 2015. Portis won it. Ports America, who was the incumbent contractor, filed a protest, and that took about a year to resolve. So that particular procurement is going to come up in 2021. Okay, so what's our strategy? Next slide. Well, we need to assume Portis is going to compete. Now, Portis is an interesting company. They actually are a pretty good stevedoring company. But they've got some management issues right now. Their president was fired a year ago. Their company that owned them was consumed into another company, and they were bought out by Patriot Rail, who is owned by a big investment firm on Wall Street called Steel River Infrastructure Capital Investment. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with Porter's. There's a rumor that they're going to be sold. I don't know. But I have to assume, for the purposes of what we're trying to do, that we're going to have to compete against them. So what do we need to do? And by the way, this is not only bringing you up to date, but it's also getting to a lot of the stevedoring companies who are over there. You got to listen up, because we've got to win these. We've got to win these contracts. So how do we do it? We've got to work out wages and benefits, whatever is required to win. I'm going to give you a little story. 5 years ago, we sat down with 1, 2, 3 stevedoring contracts who were interested in winning the Jacksonville contract. And we worked hard. We, the ILA, worked hard. We lowered our wages. We lowered as much as we could the benefits, because we have to have the benefits, but we did make some concessions on that. But we were let down by the stevedoring companies. They did not put the required effort on those other 3 factors other than price, right? Management, technical approach, past performance, and did not write good contracts, and lost some key points like cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was important 5 years ago, and it's even more important right now. So we've got to address that. We've also got to address the adequate trained number of operators, both on cranes and on heavy equipment. We got an issue going on at Sunny Point right now on that very issue. We don't have enough trained and not enough crane operators and trained operators. And in fact, we're meeting with the 2 weeks, the 3 presidents, Greg Washington, Charles Simmons, and Michael Clements, are going to be meeting with the commander, who is a female. By the way, she's a female, and she's good. Colonel Heather Carlisle. We're going to be meeting on that very issue. But we got to address that in that procurement. And of course, as I said before, we've got to figure out also, and this is going to be the topic of my next slide, how to facilitate troop movements because of the international situation. And I mentioned cybersecurity. So that's the strategy that we got, and we need to start now, you guys. Got to start now. Start writing, start thinking, so we can win. Next. Okay. Next slide. So, what's our future workload? Well, at least under this administration and in this world situation, it's going to increase. Why? Well, you read the papers, you know what's happening on the Middle East with the Iran aggression. We also are going to have to keep troops in Afghanistan to facilitate the peace talks that are occurring between Afghanistan, Pakistan, us, and the Taliban. We cannot pull those troops out right away. We're also involved with old Putin in Eastern Europe. We don't know what Russia's going to do. So we have to maintain our readiness in the Baltic states, in the eastern states that border Russia. That includes Poland, that includes the Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, all of those type of things. So you may not realize this, but the military is sending over every quarter either a battalion-size element, battalion's roughly 1,000, or a brigade-size element over into those countries that's telling Putin, don't fool around anymore. Well, they need supplies. They need ammunition, so on. I mean, we're going to be busy supplying and fixing those things. Also, foreign military sales. Foreign military sales is when we take our superb U.S. equipment and supplies and we sell it. And we've got a big sales going on right now in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. So that's going to continue to grow, and that's going to be part of our future workload. So because of the international situation, our future workload looks pretty good. In conclusion then, though, we got to all unite between the military stevedoring companies and our ILA presidents who are involved in military reports, because I don't want to win 50%. That's what we did back in 2015. We won 3 out of 6. I want to win them all. Clyde Fitzgerald, you remember Clyde? We worked hard to try and win them all. We didn't quite get it, but boy, we're going to start early and see if we can get them all right now. That's it. Thank you.